Welcome to the Revenge Arrives channel. Our first channel story was our inspiration for the channel name. Today, I will tell the story of a group of friends who ventured on a weekend into the forest and were surprised by terrifying events. Are you prepared to hear the story? Let your imagination flow and board with me on this chilling story. Legend says that in the forest, an entity takes over the souls of people who disturb the peace of the place. No matter who or where, just whoever has the misfortune to cross its path. In the forest, two friends are preparing to go on a trail. Lawrence and Stull are escaping the rush of everyday life and are going to spend the weekend hiking, one of their favorite hobbies. They arrive by car at a remote forest, excited because they will finally have the rest they have been waiting for. As the two advance, they find a path between some rocks to pass and continue the trail. As they pass through the narrow part of a cliff, some birds scare Stull, who almost falls. Lawrence holds him and they continue. They arrive at a clearing and decide to stop for a while. When they hear noises like grunts or groans in the middle of the forest, they decide to go and see what it is. Not far away, they find a deer with open wounds and a lot of blood. Lawrence approaches the deer and tries to think of how to end the animal's suffering quickly. When Lawrence gets too close, the deer feels threatened and thrusts its antlers toward him, cutting off his arm. Lawrence nods and they head back to camp. After looking through his backpack, he finds nothing. Stull sees no other option and heads back down the trail, leaving Lawrence in the clearing waiting for him. Lawrence is apprehensive about being alone in that place, but tries to forget about it and focus on being aware of his surroundings so that no animals come near him. Some time passes and Lawrence begins to hear strange noises in the middle of the dense forest. A horrible and very loud noise interrupts Lawrence, who freezes in fear. He quickly grabs his knife and holds it tightly, looking in all directions, when suddenly the deer that they had seen before appears between the trees, but now with a grotesque shape, hideous with horrible teeth. Lawrence is paralyzed in shock, not knowing what to do, without him realizing the creature has already gotten considerably closer to him. He starts stabbing and cutting the creature, trying to defend himself, when he hears another shrill scream and ends up tripping and falling. He gets up quickly and looks around, desperately looking for the creature, but he doesn't see anything. Instead, he sees his hands full of blood and looks at the ground. When he sees his friend Stull is lying mutilated, dead and covered in blood, with a backpack thrown at his side. Lawrence is completely in shock. He can't move. He can't breathe. He can only stare at his hands covered in blood and the corpse of his best friend on the floor. He can't even cry or lament. He just laughs. Lawrence refuses to believe that he killed his best friend. He goes back down the trail looking for Stull. He doesn't pay attention to the path. He hits some trees and trips a few times, until he finally realizes that he got lost in the forest. Remembering what Stull had said earlier, his head fills with thoughts. He begins to have a crisis and continues wandering, trying to find a way, when suddenly, he stops and returns all the way, as if he strangely knew the way. He picks up Stull's body and the backpack, and drags them to the precipice and simply throws them. Gordon and Julia are on their way to their trip. In the car they exchange caresses. They are excited about the weekend. Gordon is driving the van he borrowed from his father, so he goes to his friends' houses to pick them up. On the way they have fun, talk, play, and are counting the seconds until they reach the valley. They follow a road closed through dense forest on both sides, at one point even sinister, but they don't seem to care about that. In a place far from the city, in the middle of the forest, with a lake nearby, lots of trees and a clearing, it seems like the perfect place to camp with a fire. Young people can enjoy it without anyone getting in the way. The group arrives at the location, gets out of the van excitedly, taking a good look at the place. A clearing, the perfect place. Soon they start to unload things and divide the tasks, setting up tents, getting wood for the fire, etc. A little later, the group gathers around the campfire to drink and chat. Amid the fun, everyone drinks a lot, but Gordon really goes overboard. He's already lying on a log, almost out, but he still has the strength to take another sip. He takes the bottle, and when he goes to put it in his mouth, Julia stops him. Julia takes the bottle and sets it aside. Peter and Fred, also drunk, laugh a lot. While hugging Sally looks over his shoulder as he laughs. Julia also laughs at the joke and everyone looks at each other in silence. Julia and Nora are the only ones who are sober. Peter gets up drunk, staggering, and goes to Julia to try to convince her. Julia pushes Peter in disbelief of what she just heard. Fred also gets up and starts walking towards Peter and Julia. Peter and Fred laugh a lot. Julia doesn't like this type of subject due to her traumatic past. Julia is shocked by what Fred just said. Peter pushes Julia when he says this, and Julia ends up losing her balance by falling into the fire. Everyone stands up in shock, scared. Nora runs and pulls Julia from the fire, but Julia's face is already burned and she screams in pain. Nora tries to help while the group watches in bewilderment. A terrified Julia dodges and leaves disoriented through the dense forest, trying to escape, unable to see straight and completely terrified. Peter and Fred begin to follow her. Nora follows shortly behind, calling for Julia. Julia gets lost along the way. The pain she feels is immense, unbearable. She doesn't know where to go, only that they are after her and that she needs to escape. She continues to stagger through the forest disoriented. When she comes across a cliff, she tries to go back and look for another way. When Peter appears, who desperately pushes her to kill her, as he is worried if she reports them and they in trouble. Julia falls, and while she screams, Nora sees the scene and starts screaming, running faster towards the cliff. Peter watches Julia fall indifferently. He can no longer think because he is too drunk. Fred looks at the scene in disbelief, looks at Peter and doesn't believe his indifference. Nora reaches the edge of the cliff, with her legs shaking, and she falls to the ground and starts to cry and screams. Will and Sally also come running. Nora is completely desperate. Everyone is on the edge of the cliff looking down in astonishment, not believing what is happening.